My name's Sandy Cull and I'm a book designer. Mainly globalisation probably has had a huge effect in the way we find artists, photographers, research, get our inspiration. We don't always have to go to galleries and museums, etc. now, we just see it online. But it also probably had an effect on the way, the craft of book design. So now it's all can be crowdsourced, and I think that undervalues the craft a bit. Even the way authors and agents are now much more involved in the process, and they're much more informed about the resources that a designer uses. Everyone's an author, everyone's an illustrator, everyone's a photographer these days. So that's had a huge effect, I think. Now I think authors, agents, publishers, they like to have a very final concept given to them in the very first stages. So instead of sketching and showing a sketch and having that approved, you have to pretty much have a final image. It has, there's nothing really to change other than to make it high res. That's quite a big change, so it sort of changes the way a designer will approach that first stage of ideas generating. So I think now too, designers don't need to have such an in-depth knowledge of typesetting or typography, photography. They really don't know the semantics of type necessarily, or the golden mean, or any of that stuff that we all needed to know as part of our understanding of setting type. Oh, when I studied at Swinburne, it was, I was showing my age, but I remember the first IBM typewriter that had the ball on it, and that was like a major sort of thing, so I have happened to be in the right place at the right time as far as technology goes. So when Apple came in, I learnt all those programs. The old Quark Express, I was there when that first came before Apple. And so the technology is very much the tool, but I think sometimes we use it too much in that first ideas generation of a concept. Technology is it really. If you're not, But I actually think there's a trend now to moving away from the computer and going and doing life drawing again and relearning those old skills that set one apart from anybody who can just do a drawing or do a sketch or do a photograph on their phone. We need to go back to those original skills. Look, I think learning history is important generally, whether you're in medicine or music or the arts. Knowing the reason why some things came about, knowing the context in which they were created is really important. The past creates the present creates the past. You learn from your mistakes, you learn from mistakes other people have made, and you probably are able to elaborate and expand upon those ideas. Again, apart from anything else, it's fun. It was a great story, the Gutenberg Bible. Cliche, I know, but it's a great story, and to know how that came about makes you a better designer in knowing why certain things were done back then. I think it makes us more considerate designers or more intelligent designers, I think. So it would be the same for a musician if they knew why certain Baroque music was created at a certain time. It gives context. Look, I have got the copy of Robert Bringhurst's Essentials of Typography. No, that's not quite the right title. And I have read bits of that. I need to read the whole thing through again. Anybody like the lovely David Band, RIP, and there's mostly artists, I think, I find really inspiring. Look, even contemporaries, I look at Josh Durham's book designs and just think, wow, why didn't I do that? Or why, So it's history as well as contemporary, actually. The contribution I'm most proud of is probably connecting people. When I first went freelance after being at Penguin for 10 years, there was not really much communication between designers, and as a freelancer working in the front room, it was quite isolating. And one of the things that I started was the About Book Design blog, and that was in 2010 in response to a few designers getting together and discussing how there wasn't any chance to communicate with each other, or that it wasn't generally done. And it was quite a risk for me to go public with a blog, because I'm not comfortable in that space. But and I also felt, it could be misconstrued or misinterpreted. But it was just a chance to try to get people to discuss stuff that they were going through, their experiences as designers. So that's probably and that book design blog grew into other things, other networks, a small guild of book designers in Melbourne that got together, and it definitely highlighted that there was a need to do that, and an interest in people being involved in something. So then from that came ABDA, and I think the Australian Book Designers Association is now in its third year, and it's been a fantastic... I was on the founding committee, so I was only one of many designers who were involved. But having that group conversation has really made a difference, I think, to book designers in Australia. And recently we just had John Gray come out and do his talk, and 2 masterclasses in Sydney and Melbourne, and that's been just a great opportunity for designers to get together and discuss their craft and discuss and really meddle with some issues they might be having, or to just even introduce each other to each other and to publishers and to authors, and so it's been great. So I think that's the thing I'm probably most proud of, as well as I just love designing. So I think the membership for ABDA is probably around 80, maybe even a little more, and that's by no means all of them. There's a lot of people that we haven't managed to attract yet, but yes, it is a very small group. It is definitely a very small group, and there's not. It's for our population. It's probably a very good representation, actually. I know the Academy of British Cover Designers in the UK, they've been inspired by us and got themselves together as well as a group, formalising a group and giving themselves the opportunity to catch up. So ABDA will have some film nights, we'll have just a drinks night, or we do these public speaking, or we'll do some workshops. So it's been great. We've had a couple of State Library of Victoria sessions with Des Cowley, who's shown us the Gutenberg books and some of the best part of their collection in the special collections that he has there. I can't remember now what the name is. So we've had a session there. We've had sessions in Sydney where there's bookmakers, book artists who have talked about making books in the old-fashioned way, like limited editions. So it's been a great thing. We're publishing fewer books, we're publishing fewer authors, and if you're a debut author, you're less likely to get a publishing contract through the mainstream or the usual avenues. But self-publishing is clearly just going to continue to grow, and it will get better and better. But print hasn't died. Even John Gray said this the other night, that he hasn't stopped he's still getting a lot of work, and it will continue to do that. I think it probably has meant that books have become much more tactile again, and there's just maybe fewer printed, and the e-book comes out at the same time, the audiobook comes out at the same time, and I would say that marketing departments are more conservative because there's so much pressure on getting books to sell. They're looking for the one book that's going to carry the rest of their list. But, you know, it's not dying, and it's certainly changing, but it's not dying, and it won't. I don't think it will die. Look, being visible for me has given me many opportunities. You know, it goes without saying that if you're vocal or active, you get a voice, and that's given me lots of opportunities, opened many doors, and I'm very grateful for that. But I also think it opens you up to criticism and peer. You're always at the mercy of people's suspicions or something, that you might be doing things for a different motive. Now that might be a women thing, a female thing, that, you know, we're not very good at just sort of accepting stuff. So, and I think it does. Being visible does take you away from creating the work. It takes a lot of time to be visible on social media. It takes a lot of time to do speaking events, to do guest lecturing, or anything really. It takes you away from the work, and ultimately the work is why we're there. But the benefits far outweigh the pitfalls, I think, and you just need to have a bit of a thick skin about it, really, and be yourself, and, you know, hopefully that'll shine through. So, yeah, there's huge benefits. And look, publishing is known as being a mostly female industry. Not saying, well, I don't know what the percentage would be. It'd be really good to see what the membership percentage is of ABDA, but I'd say it's certainly more than 60% female. And so I think, you know, we've really benefited from that, because most of my employers in the past and publishers, quite visionary people, have been women, really strong women, who have been a guiding light to everyone, really, not just other women. I've really benefited from them, from being able to work with them. So publishing is a bit of an anomaly in this area. I can't remember what your question was. Back in 2008, I think it was, I was at the AG Ideas series of talks, and that was said by a book artist, Peter Lysiotis. He came out and said that, and I was, you know, sitting in my seat, and it really resonated. It just like the light went on when he said that, and it gave me permission from then on. I really think from that point on, it gave me permission to completely immerse myself in my love for books and literature. So it just felt right to just, you know, I've actually re-quoted that many times. I've since found out that it's been attributed to Charles Bukowski, and then more recently to Kinky Friedman. He said that, and it just, for me, you know, not everything I do, but so much of what I do is about books and about book design, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's just pleasure for reading, whether it's going to galleries, or it doesn't matter. I'm quite immersed in love, the whole idea about book design. So, you know, I have an old 100-year-old press that I will one day use to make limited edition hot metal books when I've got the time. You know, I can sort of see that will just that'll take a while, but it'll happen. So that quote, I think, really, if you love what you do, then you'll eventually just feel so comfortable and so right in your place that things will happen for you, that it will take care of itself. I really believe that. You know, I have teenage kids I'm saying that to these days. You know, as long as you're doing something that you love, it will all fall into place, and don't be afraid to commit and get involved and be vocal and just take it on. So anyway, they were pivotal projects for me in so many ways, particularly the Cook's Companion, to have been given the opportunity to design that with the most inspirational person I've ever worked with was Julie Gibbs, and she was a visionary at the time, and the Cook's Companion was an incredible project. Nothing had ever been published like that in Australia before. Just the sheer audacity of the scope and what Julie and Stephanie Alexander were actually doing. It hadn't been done before. So to be involved in that in its inception, which was, I think, 1995, and then to get the chance again to design the updated edition in 2005, incredible opportunity. And from that opportunity, so much has come. You know, so many doors have opened as a result, and I'll never be more grateful for that opportunity. With Up the Duff, the same thing. You know, these are big authors, and there's big authors with great courage in doing what they're doing, and to be involved, it just sort of rubs off a little bit. It's really, really lovely. Italian Joy was another one with Carla Coulson, also another one published by Julie Gibbs, and I remember, you know, I struggled with that design initially, and it was Julie and Carla that kept asking me for more, you know, something else, you know, really push the boundaries, and they really gave me wings there, and it wouldn't have happened without them. So I think if there was some advice to students, it would be about collaborating and letting people contribute to you, and making sure that you're coachable and open to that. You know, it's completely altered my career, those opportunities. So, you know, I'm very grateful. When there was a debate going on in Penguin about putting the credit for the cover designer on the back cover, and it hadn't really been there before, and it took a long time, and I think a colleague, Joe Hunt, really pushed that agenda, and it's not everybody does it still. Not all publishers will allow a designer to be on the back cover. So that was quite a major breakthrough, actually. And in those days, the text designer was not the same as the cover designer. So somebody would just design all the text, and there wasn't necessarily a relationship between the cover and the text. And we sort of fought back then in Penguin to try to have the same, that designer own both of the text and the cover, which was also a bit of a breakthrough. But I quite like that a designer is a little bit invisible. I think when you're designing literature, it should be the story that is the hero, and ideally probably a good design is when you can't see anything about the designer. You know, that's the designer's role is just to highlight the story, to get the story out there. So there's a certain dichotomy there in that I think the designer needs to be invisible, and it's never about the designer, and it's never about the design. In fact, good design is when you don't even see it. But as far as professionally, to be credited is a really lovely acknowledgement of a designer's input.